The storyline and points of view for your story. In this section, we discuss how to organise all the contents that you have collected till now to better report your research. You need to be clear about three things: the storyline of your project, the point of view from which you are going to tell the story, the format you intend to use in the story. First point, the storyline. This is an extremely important strategic choice. Identify in your project the three main moments, the three acts of the story you want to tell, as if it were a film or a novel, from where you started, what you found, and the conclusions you drew. This way you have a clear path. The first act of each story describes the starting point. It is the initial moment of the story, such as when you started this educational journey. Going back to the beginning of your activities, ask yourself, what is the point you started from? What are the elements that triggered it? For example, what were the reasons for choosing the project? Why did you consider that topic and that project important and not another one? How did you establish the research question? That is the focus around which your investigation revolves. In short, it is about describing the beginning of your story, of your research. The second act of the narrative is the development. The plot develops. It is the time of action. The protagonists, you, are taking steps to find the answers to the initial questions through the actual research. This is the moment in which you seek the answers to your questions, in which data is found and analysed, and the missing ones are sought out in the monitoring expedition. Then you identify the steps that are taking place in this stage, the turning points that allowed or will allow progress in answering the initial questions, the elements that you decided to monitor more closely during your visit. In a nutshell, narrate the important moments you faced in your research. The third and final act is the conclusion of your story. It is the final part of the story, in which the initial situation is recreated in light of the developments of the second act, that is, in your case, the research. With the material collected, the analyses conducted, the interviews and the meetings you had during the monitoring visit, you can answer the initial question. Did the initial problem change shape and size, or did you find confirmations? Did new details and information emerge that allowed you to understand further? Have your doubts been resolved? In a nutshell, what conclusions did you reach with your research? In addition to the three acts of the storyline, in order to tell a story, it is important to choose the point of view from which to start. Different points of view can lead to different ways of narrating. A story, in fact, appears different depending on who tells it. Therefore, it is important to choose from which point of view to tell the story, which type of narrator. If you are the narrator, and therefore the narrative point of view is yours, which is personal and subjective, then you write the story in the first person, describing your experience step by step. It is you, for example, who is now admiring this mountain scenery. The same object of narration can be seen from a third-person point of view. A story in the third person is where the narrator tells the facts as an external observer. For example, now it is not you who is directly admiring the scenery, but you are observing a man who is admiring the scenery, and then you will tell the same story in the third person, from narrators who observe the facts from an external point of view. In both cases, it is important to characterize who is narrating. For example, it can be you who is narrating, or you can choose to pass the mic to a character that is significant for the purposes of narrating your research in terms of communication. For example, if your project involves an intervention in the field of tourism, you can pretend that the character is a tourist in your city, or you can tell it in the form of a personal diary. Finally, it is very important to choose the format or the clothes you want your story to wear. To choose the format best suited to your story, you must start from the material collected and make some choices. For example, what are the means of communication you want to use to convey the story? What form do you want to give to the information to be communicated? Watch the video interview in the next section. You will discover some useful tips on the formats to use to tell your story.